You stand before the most photographed monument in Egypt. 66 feet tall, 240 feet long, lion body, human head, carved from a single ridge of limestone. The great Sphinx of Giza, everyone knows it, everyone thinks they know its story. Pharaoh Khafra, 2500 BC, Old Kingdom. Done. But here's what they don't tell you in the textbooks. The head is too small. The body shows water erosion in a desert, and geologists say the stone was weathered thousands of years before any pharaoh walked Egypt. What if everything we've been taught is wrong? 7 number 6, published in 1992 by Thomas Dobecki and Robert Schoch, and field mapping data from the American Research Center in Egypt Sphinx Project, 1979 to 1983, directed by Mark Lanner and James Allen. We're pulling from the actual seismic studies, the actual stratigraphic analysis, not Wikipedia summaries. Now back to the information. The Sphinx was carved around 2500 BC during the 4th dynasty reign of Pharaoh Khafra. The evidence? Proximity? The statue sits near Khafra's pyramid and valley temple. The causeway aligns. A life-size statue of Khafra was found buried in the ruins of the Valley Temple by French archaeologist Auguste Mariette in 1853. The head wears a Nemes headdress, royal cobra on the brow, 4th dynasty style. That's it. That's the case. No inscriptions, no cartouches, no hieroglyphs saying Khafra built this. Just circumstantial architectural context and one statue 330 meters away. Every stratified layer of ancient masonry documented at 1 to 20 and 1 to 10 scale. His team established that the Sphinx was quarried by cutting a U-shaped ditch into the Giza Plateau bedrock. The extracted limestone blocks went straight into building the Sphinx Temple and Khafra Valley Temple and terraces in front of the monument. Lehner's fieldwork from 1990s showed a worker settlement bigger than 10 football fields, dating to Khafra's reign. 4 clusters of 8 mud brick barracks, 600 people buried in an old kingdom cemetery half a mile south, overseers with inscribed names and titles, ordinary laborers in humble tombs. In 1999, near that cemetery, Lanner found what he called his lost city, pottery fragments, 4th dynasty seal impressions matching seals from Khafra. The site called Hayt el Ghurab, the whole complex integrated. Pyramid, causeway, valley temple, Sphinx, one building program, around 2500 BC, 101 BC, year, 1 month. 3 of inundation day, 19 of his reign. The stela tells how young Prince Thutmose napped in the Sphinx's shadow during a hunt. The statue, as embodiment of the sun god, appeared in his dream. Clear the sand from my body and I'll give you the throne. Thutmose cleared it, became pharaoh, restored the monument. The limestone blocks framing that stela matched the restoration on the Sphinx's paws and chest. Analysis shows some masonry came from walls of Khafra's pyramid causeway. The dream stela is a reused doorway lintel from Khafra's mortuary temple. Pivot sockets on the back match threshold sockets in that temple. 1100 years after Khafra, the Sphinx needed major repair. That tells us it was already ancient by New Kingdom times. But 1100 years from Khafra gets you to Thutmose. Lanner argues the rapid erosion rate of the soft Mokattam Formation limestone explains why the statue looks older than it is. The western wall of the Sphinx enclosure shows 3 ancient restoration phases. Phase 1 uses large, durable masonry with protective brown patina. 18th dynasty. Phase 2, smaller slabs overlap Phase 1. 26th dynasty. Phase 3, brick-sized stones. Roman period. Even 1,000 years ago, this monument mattered enough to save. He came because independent researcher John Anthony West contacted him in 1989. West had read French mystic Schwaller de Lubitsch, who speculated in the 1950s that the Sphinx body showed erosion from deluges. West thought the weathering patterns looked like water damage. Rainfall, not wind and sand. He needed a geologist. Schoch was skeptical but agreed to look. Schoch examined the Sphinx enclosure walls. He immediately noticed heavy erosional features, deep vertical fissures, undulating surfaces, rounded profiles. He'd seen this before. Water erosion, precipitation runoff. He compared it to other Old Kingdom structures on the plateau. The 4th dynasty tomb of Debehan, southwest of the Sphinx, cut from the same limestone formation at comparable elevation. Sharp angular weathering, wind and sand abrasion, clean edges, completely different erosion signature. The Sphinx and its enclosure showed patterns inconsistent with 4,500 years of desert weathering. The western end of the Sphinx enclosure, the rump area displayed the most severe erosion on the highest limestone strata, tapering dramatically toward the eastern end. If wind and sand caused this, you'd expect even wear. You don't get preferential top-down erosion from wind. You get it from rain falling and running down walls. Nobody found an obvious flaw. One geologist questioned whether seismic data might show natural rock variation. Schoch's data didn't follow natural rock dip. Another suggested the Sphinx could be a natural Yardang wind carved outcrop that was later sculpted. But the Sphinx body and temple blocks matched the stratification of excavated bedrock, clearly quarried intentionally, not naturally formed. Schoch returned with seismologist Thomas DeBecke then with McBride Ratcliffe and Associates Houston, Texas. Egyptian Antiquities Organization granted permission for seismic surveys. They used sledgehammer strikes on steel plates. Energy waves penetrated rock, traveled subsurface, reflected and refracted off features below. 19 refraction profiles. 2 reflection profiles, 1 refraction tomography dataset. The goal? Measure depth of subsurface weathering, find voids and cavities, map buried bedrock configuration in adjacent desert. Lines S1, S2, and S4 showed weathering depths of 6 to 8 feet below the enclosure floor, 2 to 2.5 meters, consistent weathering. Line S3 at the rear, half that depth, 1 to 1.5 meters. Abrupt step-like transition, not gradual, sharp boundary. Schoch's interpretation? The front and sides were excavated first, exposed to elements for thousands of years, weathered deep. The back area was cut later, protected longer by cliff face, less time exposed, less subsurface weathering. If you assume coffer cleared the back around 2500 BC, the front and sides must have been excavated 50 to 100% earlier. That puts initial carving between 7000 and 5000 BC, minimum. KMT, A Modern Journal of Ancient Egypt, Volume 3, Number 2, Summer 1992. Full seismic study. Seismic investigations in the vicinity of the Great Sphinx of Giza, Egypt. DeBecke and Schoch. Geoarchaeology, Volume 7, Number 6, 1992. Peer-reviewed. The seismic work also detected a cavity under the left paw of the Sphinx, chamber or void, previously unknown. Additional lesser cavities around and under the monument. Data suggested a possible tunnel-like feature running the length of the body. Schoch made no claims about purpose, just reported what the sound waves showed. Geological literature confirms long-living freshwater lakes in territories adjacent to the Nile during the Quaternary period. Lower Pleistocene to Holocene, a shorter intense rainfall period, 4000 to 3000 BC. By mid-3rd millennium, the rains tapered off. Desert took over. The last time Egypt saw sustained heavy rainfall, before 5000 BC. The erosion on the Sphinx enclosure walls required prolonged exposure to precipitation, thousands of years of it. Schoch's conservative estimate? The core body of the Sphinx dates to at least 7,000 years ago, maybe earlier, maybe much earlier depending on erosion rates. If weathering was nonlinear, slower, at greater depths due to overhead rock mass, the Sphinx could be 10,000 years old or more. James Harrell, geologist. Comments on the geological evidence for the Sphinx's age, March 2000. Harrell argued the weathering could result from moisture and sand that buried the Sphinx, atmospheric condensation, occasional Nile flooding wetting the sand, dissolved minerals, rock decay even under burial. He suggested Schoch's seismic soundings detected natural bedding planes, more porous upper layer over less porous lower layer. Not weathering, just geology. Harrell pointed out that the upper strata on enclosure walls were originally cut at 80-degree slope or batter. Eastern half of southern wall still shows this, only harder strata, overhanging weaker ones as natural dip. Not rain preference. Earthquakes and groundwater over millions of years caused the fissures, not recent water. The tomb of Debehen is at higher elevation. Different rock member, not comparable. Lal Gowrie geologist presented paper attributing Sphinx erosion to geochemical effects. Upward groundwater seepage, atmospheric condensation and evaporation even in dry climate. But water table lay too far below enclosure floor historically. Condensation damage is visible on all Giza structures equally. Can't explain the specific deep vertical weathering unique to the Sphinx enclosure. Mark Lanner countered in Archaeology magazine September-October 1994, The Sphinx Story, co-authored with Zahi Hawass. They argued wind and sand produced the observed patterns during periods when the Sphinx was cleared of protective sand. The monument spent most of its history buried, only exposed during restoration campaigns. Old Kingdom, 18th Dynasty, 26th Dynasty, Roman. Each exposure caused weathering bursts. They cited geological engineer Colin Reeder, who worked the site. Reeder acknowledged erosion from water but attributed it to rainfall runoff during dynastic period, not prehistoric. Egypt still had occasional heavy rains into the 5th Dynasty, around 2300 BC, sporadic storms until mid-3rd millennium, enough to cause visible erosion over centuries when the monument stood clear of sand. Lehner pointed to the granite casing on Sphinx Temple and Valley Temple, applied directly over limestone core blocks. Some core blocks show weathering underneath the granite. Schoch argued the granite was added long after weathered cores, proving the cores are older. Lehner responded the limestone wasn't deeply weathered. It was cut back irregularly to fit the harder granite facing. Menkaure Pyramid Temple shows the same technique clearly. Not evidence of antiquity, evidence of construction method, perfect for quarrying core blocks. terrible for weather resistance. Number 1, at bottom, is very hard. Minimal weathering. Lanner says the head endured because it's better stone. Schock says the head is a later recarving. Original head weathered badly. Dynastic Egyptians recarved it smaller. Maybe originally a lion head, full mane, proportional to lion body. Then 4th Dynasty reshaped it into pharaoh face. That explains the size mismatch. That explains why the head is less eroded. New surface versus ancient body surface. Ulrich Kapp. German Archaeological Institute handled photogrammetry. Thomas Aigner, geologist from Germany, studied correlation between Sphinx limestone members and beds in central field quarries. Aigner concluded, beds around Queen Khentkawa's tomb, 250 meters southwest, match upper Sphinx body, neck, and head. Same geological sequence. But dating based on bed correlation assumes simultaneous exposure. If the Sphinx predates the quarries, the correlation just tells you source geology, not construction timeline. Actual data shows consistent depth along sides and front with abrupt step at rear. That mistake caused Schock problems. Critics used the incorrect diagram to attack conclusions. Schock wasn't shown the film before broadcast, left out of opening credits despite assurances. The documentary brought the debate to millions. Public fascination exploded. But the error muddied scientific discussion. If you value evidence-based research that challenges accepted narratives, subscribe now. We're halfway through, and the next section reveals archaeological finds that don't fit either theory. Comment what you think so far. Over 2,000 years after Khafre, the inscription describes Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled before Khafre, making repairs to a temple of Isis. Khufu reigned approximately 2580 BC. The text says Khufu found the temple of Isis, mistress of the pyramid beside the house of Haran. Haran is the Sphinx. The stela claims Khufu built his pyramid beside the goddess temple, built a pyramid for his daughter Henutsyn beside this temple. The place of Haran Hormaket is on the south side of the house of Isis. Khufu restored the statue, all covered in painting of the guardian of the atmosphere who guides winds with his gaze. The Sphinx already existed when Khufu arrived, already ancient, already buried, already needing restoration. Uncommon for 4th Dynasty, but not impossible. Menkaura's Valley Temple triads show the same name order. The text mentions Isis, but Isis doesn't verifiably appear in records before King Ysera 5th Dynasty. She never held title Mistress of the Pyramid. Third, the stela calls Henutsyn king's daughter, but Henutsyn was queen consort, actual parents unknown. These details led scholars to declare it a pious fraud. Local priests incite period, creating false antiquity for their Isis temple. Poor text quality, late period stone carving style, case closed. Isis worship could have had earlier regional manifestations, not recorded in surviving texts. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Henutsyn's parentage is unknown, which means calling her king's daughter isn't provably wrong. The goddess title, Mistress of Pyramid, could be translation error or regional epithet not preserved elsewhere. They reconstructed original temple location. The Sate Isis temple sits next to Henutsyn's pyramid G1C, 330 meters from Sphinx, but the stela text uses preposition RGs, meaning beside or next to. What if the original temple Khufu found was beside the Sphinx, later moved or rebuilt at current Isis temple location? Multiple temples to same goddess aren't unusual. 4th Dynasty artifact list bore all marks of authenticity. Gaston Maspero, French Egyptologist, The Dawn of Civilization, said even if the stela dated to later period, it could be copy of earlier authentic artifact. Factual record of Khufu's deeds. Sir Flinders Petrie, founding father of Egyptology, considered the Sphinx older than Old Kingdom. 19th century Egyptologists had different view than modern consensus. Not fringe theory. Mainstream until mid-20th century, then orthodoxy shifted. Now alternative dating is pseudoscience, but the stela's existence raises question, why would Site priests in 670 BC invent a story about Khufu and the Sphinx? What did they gain? The fraud theory requires motivation, creating temple prestige, but claiming the Sphinx existed before Khufu doesn't enhance their temple's status. It just confuses the timeline. If they wanted to boost their Isis temple, why not claim Khufu built it fresh? Why insert detail about finding it already there? The story is oddly specific. Khufu visits site of sycamore tree near Sphinx, struck by lightning, restores record of animals killed in area, sets table with vases, has dream by Sphinx, receives instruction to record decree that will last forever. These details don't serve propaganda purpose. They read like administrative record. The inventory. Stela contradicts Khafre Sphinx theory, therefore dismissed. Circular reasoning. Confirmed by geological evidence. 10,000-year-old accurate memories transmitted through generations. Why assume Egyptian oral tradition is pure invention? Found 3 restoration phases in masonry, 18th dynasty, 26th dynasty, Roman. But those are just the visible repairs. earlier restorations could have been removed or buried. Selim Hassan, Egyptian archaeologist, finally freed the Sphinx from sand late 1930s. New York Times declared the monument emerged from impenetrable oblivion. Modern excavation was first successful clearing. All previous attempts failed. Sand poured back faster than they could dig. The cumulative effect? A monument that looks far older than its supposed age, or maybe it is far older and burial protected it from total destruction. The Sphinx shows unique erosion patterns beyond general atmospheric damage. The deep vertical fissures, the rounded profiles, the differential western end versus eastern end wear. Atmospheric effects don't explain preferential geographic patterns. He accepts water erosion, but dates Sphinx excavation to early dynastic period. Before Khafra, but not prehistoric. 3rd millennium BC, not pre-5000 BC. He argues rainfall runoff continued into 5th dynasty. Environmental conditions at Giza allowed erosion during pre-dynastic and early dynastic, when plateau saw agricultural activity. Reed proposes Sphinx predates Khufu, maybe 1st or 2nd dynasty. When Khufu built Great Pyramid, he incorporated existing Sphinx into his complex. Khafra later expanded the complex, adding his pyramid and temples. Reeder points to spatial relationships. Sphinx Causeway doesn't align perfectly with Khafra Pyramid, slight angle mismatch, but it aligns with broader plateau orientation, suggesting earlier planning grid. The Sphinx Temple remained unfinished, north and east walls cut back unevenly. Why would Khafra leave his own temple incomplete? Maybe because it wasn't his project. He inherited it, attempted repairs and expansions, never finished. Geomorphological evidence suggests pre-4th dynasty origins, even if not prehistoric. Reeder represents middle ground, not radical redating to 10,000 BC, but not orthodox 2500 BC either, maybe 3200 BC, 3rd dynasty, before the Great Pyramid Age. That's still revolutionary. It means the earliest monumental sculpture in Egypt predates the Pyramid era. It means Giza was sacred ground before Khufu and Khafra. It means the old kingdom builders inherited the site rather than creating it. Gurova Sophia, 2008 pages, 308 to 311. They examined the undulating eroded surfaces on Sphinx body. Mainstream explanation? Wind and sand abrasion. Harder rock layers resist. Softer layers erode into voids. But Manichev and Parkhomenko noted the Sphinx headfront lacks these features. If wind caused the body undulations, why spare the head? They studied coastal geomorphology in Crimea and Caucasus, recognized the Sphinx erosion pattern, wave-cut hollows, multi-level shore formations, water action from lake or sea, not wind, not rain, wave erosion. The absolute elevation mark of upper large erosion, hollow on Sphinx, corresponds to water surface level during early Pleistocene. Their conclusion? 800,000 years old. Pre-human civilization as currently defined, a monument from before Homo sapiens. Their theory is backed by science but requires rethinking everything. If correct, no known human culture existed to carve it. The implications are staggering. Pre-sapiens hominids with advanced stoneworking, unknown civilization erased from geological record, natural formation later modified, the freshwater lake evidence, the early Pleistocene water levels, all documented. Whether their age estimate is accurate, the erosion mechanism they describe, water, not wind, is consistent with Schoch's observations, just on different timescale. Since Giza hasn't experienced that much rain since last ice age ended around 12,500 years ago, the Sphinx must be at least that old. 12,500 years. His reasoning matches climate data, pluvial period, Green Sahara, regular precipitation. By 10,000 BC drying began, by 7,000 BC desert established. If the monument required millennium of rain exposure to produce observed weathering and rain stop 10,000 years ago, construction must be 11,000 to 13,000 BC. Before agriculture, before pottery, before any known civilization in Egypt. Hancock connects Sphinx to global pattern. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. 11,600 years old, massive T-shaped megalithic pillars, complex iconography, pre-agricultural. No settlement evidence, just massive ritual complex. If hunter-gatherers built Göbekli Tepe, why not the Sphinx? Hancock's timeline remains controversial, but archaeological sites keep pushing civilization older. Poverty Point, Louisiana, 3,500 BC, massive earthworks, pre-ceramic. Corral, Peru, 3000 BC, pyramids and plaza, pre-pottery. Conventional archaeology said civilization required agriculture-writing cities. Site after site proves otherwise. At 10,500 BC during spring equinox, the Sphinx would have gazed directly at constellation Leo rising on horizon. Lion monument facing Lion constellation, celestial marker. Precession of equinoxes. 26,000-year cycle means constellation positions change slowly. Stellar alignment at 10,500 BC would be perfect. At 2,500 BC Khafra's time, Leo rose at different angle. No alignment. Boval argues Sphinx served as astronomical marker, permanent stone calendar showing epoch. Critics counter alignments can be coincidental. Pyramids are tombs, not observatories, but Egyptian texts obsess over stars. Sky religion. Pharaoh becomes star after death. Pyramid texts describe celestial ascension. Why wouldn't they encode astronomy in monuments? The Sphinx as equinox marker makes functional sense. Tracks time, marks cosmic cycles, links Earth to heaven. The sculpture is recent. This middle path explains ancient weathering without requiring ancient civilization. Rock old, art new. Collins argues wave erosion patterns from when Mediterranean extended further inland, or lakes-covered region affected bare rock long before carving. Then, 4th Dynasty artisans shaped the weathered formation into guardian figure. The Sphinx Temple and Valley Temple show same weathering on core blocks under granite facing. Those blocks came from Sphinx ditch excavation, quatreed fresh, used immediately in temple construction. Yet they show deep weathering. If weathering happened before carving temples would have been built with already deteriorated blocks. Why use weathered stone? Builders had unlimited fresh limestone. Khafra quarried millions of tons for his pyramid. Why deliberately use degraded material for temple? More plausible explanation. Blocks were fresh when used. They weathered after construction, which means the temples are old, very old. They stayed 1100 years from Khafra to Thutmose. Fourth was more than enough time to erode member 2 limestone into deep recesses. The limestone erodes rapidly. Even half that time, 550 years, would cause visible degradation. Modern erosion rates measured. Extrapolate back. Numbers work. They address Schoch's seismic data, suggest weathering depth differences, reflect when different sections cleared, not when first excavated. The rump area could have remained partially protected by desert deposits longer. No need for prehistoric age. They challenge facial analysis, claiming head is not Khafra. Point out Khafra statues show range of facial styles. Ancient sculptors didn't create photographic realism, idealized forms, divine attributes. The Sphinx head could represent Khafra in idealized god-king form, not portrait likeness. Physical evidence of 4th Dynasty construction. Seal impressions, pottery, bakery remains, copper tools, barracks, administrative buildings, all dating to Khafra period, all within 400 meters of Sphinx. The site called Lost City of the Pyramid Builders, Hayt el Ghurab. If the Sphinx was ancient mystery when Khafra ruled, why is massive 4th Dynasty infrastructure right there? Why build pyramid complex around existing unknown monument unless you're the one building everything? Hawass argues logistics. The Sphinx required huge workforce, infrastructure, food, housing, water, management. Exactly what they found at Hayt el Ghurab, dated to Khafra. Therefore, Khafra built Sphinx. Maybe they built temples around it. Maybe they quarried nearby. Lehner's work on Khafra Valley Temple shows granite casing applied over limestone cores. Limestone weathered before granite placed. Lehner says cores were fresh cut back to fit granite. Schoch says weathered then covered. Same evidence. Different interpretation. Member 1 at bottom. Dense hard Makatum formation. Member 2 middle, alternating hard and soft beds with clay like yellow layers. Member 3 top, massive fine-grained durable limestone. The Sphinx body is member 2, easy to quarry, poor weather resistance. Soft beds erode, hard beds overhang, creates undulating surface. The head is member 3, better stone, fine details preserved. Quarrymen exploited member 2 for blocks. Cut horizontally along soft yellow beds, extract intervening hard beds, perfect for mass block production. They carved ditch around emerging statue. Blocks became temples. Statue remained. This much is certain. Eastern and northern enclosure walls cut back unevenly. Blocks not fitted. If Khafra's project why incomplete? Maybe time ran out. Maybe resources shifted. Maybe the project was too ambitious. Or maybe Khafra didn't start it. Maybe he inherited partial work. Old kingdom records are fragmentary. 4th Dynasty has few contemporary inscriptions. Annals lost. Khafra's name appears on some artifacts, but not on Sphinx itself. Silence is loud. The head carving theory gains support from proportion analysis. Measurements show head roughly 1/5 body length. Compared to human body proportions, head should be 1/7 to 1/8 total length. The Sphinx head is oversized for human, too small for body. If originally lion head with full mane, normal lion proportions, 7:1 length, the head would have been much larger. Carving down to pharaoh head, smaller form explains size mismatch. This theory testable. If head is recarved, there should be tool mark evidence. Fresh cuts over old surface. Schoch claims he sees this. Lehner disagrees. Both examined same surface. Both experienced. Both see different things. Confirmation bias on both sides? Maybe. Or maybe evidence is genuinely ambiguous. Rock weathering complicates analysis. 4,500 years or more of surface degradation obscures original tool marks. Restoration work covered areas with limestone slabs, new stone over old. layers upon layers of modification. Reconstructing original form from current state is detective work with missing clues. Work by Mariette. Bereza's major 11-year restoration added masonry, reset fallen blocks. Modern conservation by Egyptian ministry used ARCE maps to match historical appearance. Every intervention changed the monument. We see composite of original ancient repairs, medieval neglect, modern restoration. The Sphinx of 2026 is not the Sphinx of 2000. BC is not the Sphinx of whenever it was first carved. What we observe now tells us about the full history, not just origin. Only brief exposure windows allowed weathering. The math depends on assumptions about burial duration. No one knows exact timeline of sand cover. Estimates vary from 90% buried to 50%. That uncertainty affects erosion rate calculations significantly. If 90% buried only 450 years of exposure, erosion should be minimal. But erosion isn't minimal, it's extensive. If 50% buried 2,250 years exposed. Erosion more plausible, but still requires high decay rate. The variables are too uncertain. Erosion analysis can support multiple dates depending on assumptions. That's why Schoch and Lehner both cite erosion, but reach opposite conclusions. No carbon-14, no organic tissue. Can't directly date when rock was carved. Can only infer from context and weathering. Context is Khafra's complex. Weathering is severe. 2 data points. One supports orthodox view, one supports alternative. Stalemate. Valid concern. Invasive archaeology damages monuments, but non-invasive techniques exist now. Ground-penetrating radar, muon tomography, already used on pyramids, found hidden voids in Great Pyramid. Same technology could map Sphinx interior without drilling, could locate sealed chambers, could find inscriptions or artifacts, could date construction fill, could answer questions definitively. Why not use it? Politics, bureaucracy, fear of what might be found. If Sphinx is Khafra's, it enhances Egypt's heritage. If Sphinx predates pharaohs, it complicates history. Some prefer known comfortable narrative to uncertain revolutionary discovery. If that's possible, why not sophisticated monuments in Egypt, same era? The Nile Valley during African humid period 10,000 to 5,000 BC was paradise. Rivers, lakes, forests, grasslands, abundant game, perfect conditions for a settled complex society. Modern humans fully evolved. Same brain capacity as us, same intelligence. Why assume they did nothing for thousands of years, then suddenly invented civilization around 3000 BC? Poverty of evidence doesn't mean absence of capability. Egypt's pre-dynastic and early dynastic sites are poorly preserved. Nile floods destroyed many, desert covered others. Lack of found sites doesn't prove sites never existed. It proves we haven't found them yet. Or we have, but haven't recognized what they are. How many weathered rock formations are dismissed as natural when they're ancient quarries or structures? Without excavation, we can't tell. Robert Schoch, based on geology, says 7,000 to 12,000 years old. Mark Lehner, based on archaeology, says 4,500 years old. Colin Reeder, based on geomorphology, says maybe early dynastic pre-Khafra, but not prehistoric. Manichev and Parkhomenko, based on wave erosion, say 800,000 years old. Graham Hancock and Robert Bovall, based on climate and astronomy, say 12,500 years old. The evidence supports multiple interpretations, because the evidence is incomplete. The Sphinx fits into that context. That's the safe conclusion. Conservative interpretation. But conservative doesn't mean correct. Continental drift was a radical idea once. Plate tectonics was fringe theory. Dinosaur extinction by asteroid impact laughable proposal. Until evidence accumulated, until mechanisms were explained, until alternative hypotheses failed. Then, radical became mainstream. Could Sphinx redating follow same path? Maybe. If more evidence surfaces, if technology reveals sealed chambers, if new sites push Egyptian civilization earlier, the debate continues. Located on Giza Plateau, west bank of Nile, south of modern Cairo. Associated with Sphinx, Temple Valley Temple, and pyramids. Undergone multiple restoration campaigns throughout history. Currently protected as UNESCO World Heritage Site. Everything else? Interpretation, theory, educated guess. The monument keeps its secrets, maybe intentionally. Maybe ancient builders wanted mystery. Maybe they encoded messages in proportion and alignment we haven't deciphered. Maybe the Sphinx is both younger and older than we think. Younger is sculpture. Older is sacred site. Layer upon layer of meaning and modification across millennia. Rainfall is a question of climate models and erosion rates. Both are educated estimates, not measurements. The seismic subsurface weathering is real. Whether it shows progressive excavation or differential burial history is a question of archaeological sequence, not measured fact. The astronomical alignments are real calculations. Whether they were intentional design or coincidental is a question of ancient intent impossible to prove. The inventory stela text is real artifact. Whether it's accurate copy of 4th Dynasty record or Sate period fabrication is a question of historical criticism and bias. Until we develop better dating methods, the debate continues. The Sphinx watches, waits, erodes slowly. Each year more detail lost, each decade more uncertainty. Maybe that's fitting. Maybe mysteries should remain mysterious. Maybe not. Everything needs an answer. But the scientist in us wants to know. The human in us needs to know. Are we the first high civilization, or are we the latest in long cycle of rise and fall? Did we inherit knowledge from vanished culture, or did we start from zero? The Sphinx might tell us. If we learn to read its language, geology is that language, weather patterns, erosion rates, mineral content, bedrock structure. Stone tell stories. We're still learning to listen. We're getting better at reading. But translation is hard. Context matters. Assumptions matter. Bias matters. Two experts examine same rock, see different history. Both honest, both trained, both certain. Both may be right. Both may be wrong. Welcome to archaeology. Welcome to geology. Welcome to trying to understand the past with fractured evidence and incomplete records. Maybe new imaging shows what we've missed. Maybe someone finds Khufu's inscription. Maybe sealed chamber contains records. Maybe next decade brings breakthrough. Until then, we have what we have. The greatest statue in Egypt, guardian of the necropolis, face of mystery, body of questions. The Sphinx that proves we don't know everything, that admits our ignorance, that challenges our certainty. And maybe that's the monument's purpose, not answer. Question, not solution. Problem, not end of mystery, beginning of wonder. The Sphinx asks, who built you? When? Why? And we answer, we think, we believe, we hypothesize, but we don't know. Not for sure, not yet. And in admitting that we honor truth, real science isn't about certainty. It's about evidence and honest doubt. The Sphinx teaches humility, teaches patience, teaches that some questions take generations to answer, teaches that old truths can be overturned by new evidence. That's the real lesson. Stay curious, keep questioning, test assumptions, follow data wherever it leads, even if it contradicts what everyone knows, especially then. Because what everyone knows is just current consensus, and consensus changes, always has, always will. The Sphinx will outlast our theories, our debates, our certainty. Stone endures, ideas evolve, facts emerge. The monument stands and waits for us to understand. We're getting closer, inch by inch, year by year, theory by theory. One day we'll know. Until then we wonder. And wondering is where discovery begins.